overwhelming support for school choice in New Hampshire. Coming up in the cloakroom. Hi, I'm Grant Bossy, and welcome back into the Cloakroom, the video magazine from the Josiah Bartlett Center for Public Policy. This week, the New Hampshire House and the New Hampshire Senate both overwhelmingly approved different versions of the School Choice Scholarship Act. The legislation, a top priority for the Josiah Bartlett Center, would allow tax credits for businesses who make donations to scholarship organizations, which in turn award scholarships to parents looking for alternatives to their local public schools. We bring you now the House debate on the School Choice Scholarship Act.
Public schools are held to a higher level of accountability. Every year they must test their students to show that academic progress has been made. They must use an objective, standardized assessment to do this, and they face stiff sanctions if AYP is not met. Private schools are not required to measure academic growth using standardized measures, nor can the state require them to. If this bill becomes law, by the 10th year of the program, it could be issuing as much as $30 million in tax credits and funding more than 17,000 students. How will we know if the private schools are using the money wisely and educating these children well? The only accountability measure in this bill is a simple parent satisfaction survey. No other state with a similar voucher-type plan has such a lax and subjective accountability system. We will have no objective way of knowing whether the money diverted from our public schools.
Member will please suspend. Member's time is expired. Just take a few moments to conclude. Thank you. We appreciate it.
We will have no way of knowing whether the money diverted from our schools is spent wisely or that the kids are learning. I urge you on callers, do the right thing. Please vote no on SB 370. Thank you.
In my prior experience as a school administrator, oftentimes sat down with teachers, with parents. Can you hear? Yeah. How about that, huh? And we would talk about students in our classrooms in our schools. Some students don't fit, whether it be for social, emotional, maturity, academic, or maybe the family's in transition. There are reasons for choice. And that's what this bill is all about, choice. There are those which can pay their property taxes, and there are those that can also pay tuition, but there are those that cannot. I was fortunate. My parents were able to pay the property taxes and send me to a school over in Vermont Academy. There are those that can't afford that choice. Fortunately, we have a few schools in the state which have contracts with private schools, whether it's private/public. St. Johnsbury Academy, Fedbury Academy, people in Piermont can attend. But by choice, they do that. But this bill right here makes it more possible for all students to enjoy this opportunity to participate in other types of schools. We've heard that the AYP for the state a few seconds ago, and I'd like to reference that. AYP, Annual Yearly Progress, shows that 70% of our schools are not meeting AYP in the state. To quote the Commissioner of Education in the state, our accountability system is broken. We need competition in the state. We need the ability to enable students in the towns like I come from, where there is no opportunity for a charter school. If you want to go, you go to North Country Charter, where there might be a couple slots open. You can't go anywhere else except homeschooling. We would like to have the opportunity for all students to enjoy the opportunity to have choice and to have an education which they perceive and their parents perceive as just not the opportunity for an adequate education. They want the best possible education. I've never in all my days of education experienced such a horrible word as adequate. We might as well call it marginal. And so I think that we have to be really considering this and asking ourselves, why are we oppositional to choice and competition? Competition certainly helped Toyota, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. When Toyota came over here in the 70s and Datsun came over here, we had to quickly change and rebuild those cars. That's what has to happen in education too, and that provides the opportunity. I was doing a little research the other night regarding tax credits, and the federal government back in 1997 enacted what they call the Fair Tax Credits, or the Taxpayer Relief Act. That provided the opportunity for tax credits to be applied towards tuition to colleges, both private and public. There's more money that comes for private education, public schools at the post-secondary level from tax credits than there are from Pell Grants. The federal government's already into this game. We're not. We should be getting into it. We should be instilling the opportunity for all children. Lastly, we've got to get over this idea that we're all entitled to this money. There's no entitlement from the Tax Credit Scholarship Act. This money has not been in government. It is not government money. It's money that is applied towards that BET and BPT, and it should be used in a way that those corporations, those businesses see as they see fit. So in conclusion, I don't want to spend more time on it. I know there's others coming to speak. There are a lot of benefits, including financial benefits. There's no fixed charges or variable charges that the schools lose from this. It's neutral. We need to be thinking about it and vote green on this one. Thank you.
After the onslaught of emails regarding this bill, we all know that Milton Friedman is the godfather of private school vouchers, and that he famously said, vouchers are a means to make a transition from a government to a free market system. We also know from the Manchester Union Leader that SB 372 and its sister, House Bill 1607, far from being the brainchild of free-thinking, entrepreneurial New Hampshire legislators, are actually patterned on similar legislation in other states, and that the legislative models were originally created by the Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice, based in Indianapolis. Interestingly, another Friedman, author and columnist Thomas Friedman, I presume no relation, recommends nearly the opposite philosophy. In a column in last Sunday's New York Times, Thomas Friedman wrote, throughout our society, we are losing the places and institutions that used to bring people together from different walks of life. Unless the rich and poor encounter one another in everyday life, it is hard to think of ourselves as engaged in a common project. At a time when to fix our society, we need to do big, hard things together. The marketization of public life becomes one more thing pulling us apart. With SB 372, the marketization of public life strikes at the core of America's fundamental founding philosophy, our mutual pledge to work together to better ourselves and to make our society work. Instead, the idea behind this legislation taps into the essential crystal of community, shattering it into multiple shards. Currently, the state of New Hampshire contributes less than 25% of the total spent on public school funding, while most states have a closer to 50-50 split between state and local government. In New Hampshire, 75% of public education costs are borne by local property taxpayers. Instead of allocating the state's already scant resources to shore up our system of public education, this bill chooses to invest a portion of it in private schools. The purported intent being to give everyone an equal chance at a good education. Ironically, this is what public schools are supposed to do. So this bill makes what should be our top priority that much harder. Most would say we already have quite enough to do. It starts small, just $3.4 million to about 1,700 students in the first year, but it grows fast. Within a decade, that $3 million is $30 million. The 1,700 students are 17,000. I don't have to tell you, this is a huge, damaging shift. And as public school populations shrink, fixed costs don't go away. Overhead per student goes up, and without funding, the quality of instruction will slide. Adequate funding. As the representative from Hillsboro noted, At the same time state allocations decrease, public schools will be left with the most challenging students to educate. The program shifts scarce money from public schools accountable to their communities to private schools with the barest of educational accountability. And local property taxpayers will see their taxes increase despite the floor amendment. Again, just as with HB 1607, this bill's passage guarantees a lawsuit. As the minority blurb notes, the success of a legal challenge is a real possibility, notwithstanding the results in other states whose constitutions do not include New Hampshire's provision against using monies, including tax credits, for the use of the schools or institutions of any religious sect or denomination.
I spoke against the bill when it first came here because the bill was set up in such a way that it would downshift the costs to local property taxpayers. In other words, for each child who left the school district with a scholarship to go to a private school, the school district would lose roughly $4,100 in state adequacy aid, and the school district would not be able to lower its expenses to compensate for that loss of revenue. You can't fire teachers when 2 or 3 kids leave, but you sure lose $8,200. The sponsors approached me and we worked together and came out with an amendment, which is included in the amendment before us, which basically caps the loss of revenue to any school district. It works as follows. The maximum amount of money that a school district could lose as a result of pupils leaving the school district under the scholarship grant program is 1/4 of 1% of their budget.
Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to do something very fundamental. It seeks to give parents the ability to send their children to the best school possible for their children. Not too long ago, Mr. Speaker, we had the philosophy right in education. The end goal was about the best educational outcomes possible for the students. It was about the kids. But somewhere along the line, special interests got involved, and others got involved. And suddenly it became all about the money. It didn't become about what's best for the kids, it became about the money. Mr. Speaker, this legislation seeks to ensure the greatest outcomes for children, regardless of the way in which the student needs to achieve that outcome. Our top priority should be the students. And Mr. Speaker, if you come from a rich family, you have school choice. Mommy and Daddy cuts you a check, and you go to whatever school they feel is most appropriate for you. But what about the child that doesn't come from the wealthy family? What about the child that comes from the middle-income family, to the lower-income family? And that student needs something different than the traditional education setting. Well, that kid's trapped. He doesn't have school choice. This bill, in a small way, seeks to allow that student the opportunity to go out and get the best education possible for them.
The House will be attentive to the state of the vote. 136 members having voted in the affirmative, 97 in the negative. Committee reports to all.
The House amended the Senate version of the School Choice Scholarship Act, so those differences need to be ironed out before the bill heads to Governor John Lynch. I'm Grant Bossy. Thanks for watching The Cloakroom.